617, respond to report of shots fired.
The Coroner Talk podcast takes you behind the scenes with coroners, clinicians, and death investigators from around the world to provide training, news, and interviews from leading experts in the area of death investigation and scene management, bringing real stories and solid training together in one source. Now, here's your host, Darren Dake.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of Coroner Talk. I am so happy that you decided to join Wendy and I yet again for another episode of Coroner Talk. Hey, I just want to remind you, if you are interested in coming to the Medical Legal Death Investigator class in Missouri, it's a week-long class in Missouri. If you're interested in that, you need to act now because it is March 18th, I think it is, or 21st, sometime around the third week of March, and we're starting to fill that class, and I know we get people from all around the country. It's a great opportunity to network, and there's a lot of good instructors and a lot of good training for that week-long class. You can go to the website, of course, click on the Academy link, and find out all that information. And, of course, there is a lot of online classes that you can take. One last thing, I have been doing quite a bit of booking in-person trainings for the summer. My spring is full. If you are interested at all in having some of our Academy classes brought to your conference or your sheriff's department, your coroner's office, reach out to me and we can make that happen. Someone on our student support team will get that started and then forward it over to me and we can get that booked. We're now booked up through June, but then anytime after that, we can start booking some of your conferences and some of your trainings. Would love to do that. Just got back from Jackson, Wyoming. Had a great time out there. We're going to be in several states over the next couple of months. So if you want me out there, if you have some training you want me to do, or one of our other instructors, let us know, and I am here to help in every way that I can. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Today, we're going to talk about the impact of social media when it comes to death investigation and criminal investigation. Now, there's good and there's bad, and we're going to talk about both of those. Wendy and I are going to talk about both of those in just a moment.
Adjust your earbuds, turn up those speakers, and hang on. It's now time for this week's featured conversation.
Welcome back, Wendy.
Hey, how's it going?
You know, everything is wonderful. You're in Colorado, and it's high elevation and cold out there. And I have spent the last few days this week, as we record this, in Jackson, Wyoming, where it was about 13, and it was very cold and very high. Again, I think I talked about a couple weeks ago about how hard it is to walk around and teach at 6,000, 7,000 feet elevation, and I was gasping for air some of the time.
Oh boy. Hope you had your little canister of oxygen with you.
Yeah, what's funny, we talked about that a few weeks ago, and I was at a grocery store getting some stuff at a grocery store, and I seen that little oxygen container, and I'm like, hey, that don't work.
No, it doesn't.
Anyway, when I seen it, it was funny to notice that. Hey, and we've got some comments back on what we did on elevation death, the HAPE and things like that. Some people have really commented that it helped them to understand more about
good.
Elevation death. So that was great. People really, really enjoyed that that episode. So that's fantastic. But today we're going to talk about social media impact in investigations. Big deal. I've had a lot of good and positive from it. What about you? Let's just start off with a couple of, initial thought. Let's just jump off somewhere. What have you seen that social media can do? How can it be bad for us? How does it hurt us? Social media, how does it hurt us?
Well, what I've seen, what happens, and because we are in an area where we have a lot of tourist industry, that's our main income in Summit County, is we are a very tourist-driven county where we have 4 ski areas in the county. We have lots of visitors from everywhere. And what I'm seeing with the impact of social media negatively on our investigations is that a lot of the young people are there and they will whip out their cell phones and start recording at the death scene or posting on Facebook or Instagram or any of the other social media outlets about the death of their friend or whoever they're there with visiting. And that goes out, and somebody from the family is going to see that before I can get back to the office to notify next of kin that their loved one has just died while they're out here visiting.
Right. I think that's happened to probably all of us that works death investigation, and I've got some stories on that myself. Another thing that it can cause a problem on is in the criminal side. We'll come back to death itself in a moment, but just on criminal investigation, like, for instance, in one case, a burglary. We had a big burglary going on. We had a lot of stuff happening, and there was people taking pictures and sending on social media. Well, of course, the problem with that is this was a very high-profile business that got broke into. Well, then the speculation started. Who did it? Who did that? Well, some of it may have been right. Some of it may have been wrong, but it actually tipped off suspects that people were talking about them and things like that. And I get it. People have the right and the free will to say whatever they want on social media, which obviously can be bad in and of itself.
Yeah.
But that certainly can cause problems with police and coroner MEs to work an investigation properly, because it also, not only does it tip off the wrong people, it disseminates misinformation. And I know we don't ever agree that Facebook disseminates false information. I mean, heaven forbid.
No, never.
They are the best, So, and it's not just about, political or government type misinformation. It's also just among us, just among people talking amongst themselves. That's disinformation, and it can, and in our case, we've seen instances where it has caused a neighborhood or community to be outraged or angered or scared when in fact there was nothing true about it.
Correct. Yeah. And it's, people are putting out information that they know nothing about. For instance, again, going back to the friends that may be with their friend that died, and they're not understanding what the cause of death is, and they're making a lot of speculations and putting it out there before we've even determined what the cause of death is.
Yes, exactly. Well, and here's an example of bad. I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago that we were preparing for a coroner's inquest in our county. We had that. It was successful. Now, again, I will say, as I've said before, facts do nothing to persuade an opinion.
Right.
We presented all the facts known and available to us. The jury reached a conclusion, but as you might imagine, because we didn't tar, feather, castrate, and hang the guy who did the shooting in the town square, then nothing was good enough for the family.
Oh, boy.
And so regardless of the facts of the case, they are now still saying that we're covering stuff up, and, they're bringing race into it, which race has absolutely nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Right.
But they're bringing that in there. And in this political climate that we're in America, everything has a race component, even if it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so social media is blowing up. The family is making accusations against myself, against the sheriff, against prosecutor, against witnesses. They're causing a lot of things, not only disinformation, because I know the family's hurting and all that, but it's not just about disinformation. They're actually putting some of the witnesses in danger because they're calling them out by name and
oh boy,
just short of address. I'm sure it'll happen at some point. And calling them a liar and calling them instrumental in this race, covering up because of race and all this. These witnesses did nothing wrong, but the families are attacking them, accusing them of doing something on social media. And of course, social media is great to be able, whether you're anonymous or not, you can just spout off anything you want, hateful, and it just goes it goes viral within that post. There are people here that know nothing about it, and because we know all about it, are making accusations that are totally, totally false, and are calling for the injury of some of the witnesses that gave truthful comments. That's dangerous.
That is very dangerous. Wow. That's frightening.
Yes, and that's social media. But before we had that, we might have got together and talked at the bar, or we might have talked together and talked, but now you have the ability to have hundreds or thousands or more of people involved in your misinformation.
Well, and you get the keyboard warriors that hide behind their keyboard. They're anonymous to a point, and they feel more brave to step out and say what they normally wouldn't say if they were in a public setting face to face with people.
Yes. And there's a lot of accounts, Facebook, Twitter, all of those that are fake accounts where it's not the real person's name. And so
Right.
they can say and do whatever they may live in one town or state, but say they're from another town or state. Nobody can ever find them, and here they are. And they may have a big friend list. This isn't new. They may have a lot of connections, a lot of friends on their friends list. It may look like a real person, which it is a real person, just false identity, false location. So it's not like they've got one friend, right? It's like
Right.
Well, now they can say whatever they want, and the person behind the keyboard has absolutely no ability to be found out or to be ridiculed, and
Right.
and again, that's very dangerous.
And there's no repercussions
None.
for what they've done.
No, none.
And it seems like with a lot of these younger people too, and not just younger people, a lot of people, they want to be the first ones to get that information out there, because then that's those facts that, or it's not facts, but that misinformation that they put out is the thing that people grab onto, and then it goes from there.
Right, and it can be helpful. There are some times that it's helpful. Have you got an example? I've got 2 or 3, but have you got an example of how social media in some way has helped in an investigation?
Oh, it's definitely very helpful for me to find next of kin, or track the person's last actions. When did they last post? What were they posting about? Did they talk about anything that could have contributed to their death? But social media is great for trying to locate next of kin or find out more about that person. And especially in the criminal realm, on the law enforcement side, criminals post everything. It's amazing what they post and make public. They don't make anything private, so it's very easy to do investigations on them through social media.
Yeah, and one of the classes I taught, and one of the portions of the class that I taught in Jackson was, about being prepared and having, a good investigation. However, luck plays into that sometimes. But luck means nothing if you haven't done a good investigation or scene work ahead of time. Well, luck is also when it comes to these guys that aren't too smart about posting everything public in their social media. But that's to our benefit, right? That is to our benefit.
Oh, yeah.
I know some police officers talking about fake profiles. I know some police officers that have fake profiles, and they have one for family and friends and whatever, but they have another one that they call their, they call it their SH head profile. And they'll post things on there. Like this one person has one that is a woman, and like, for instance, the other day she said something about she's so happy she gets to see her kids for 2 hours today. She hopes the court allows her to have more time, and just things that some people in a criminal element or that type of lifestyle would be posting. They talk about parties, talk about drugs, talk about baby daddies, talk about whatever they talk about. Well, they've got a great big following. And, lives in another town, but close by, and they find all kinds of things out on social media. If someone has done a big crime or a crime of any kind, they'll reach out and say, "Hey, I heard Billy Bob did this. Do you guys think he would really do that?" And people be weighing in. Man, I know he did it. He took that stuff to grandma's. I seen it. Oh, great.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to have those fake profiles on the police side.
Right.
So, hey, we can do what they do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I have I call it my undercover profile. And a lot of my detectives also have an undercover Facebook profile so that we can track these people.
Yeah.
And not be discovered that we're law enforcement.
Yes. And you probably have a lot of friends on that list and things like that, and that's good. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
You know, one thing just come to mind, back to bad. We had a plane crash in our county, and there was a drone flying over. And of course, we finally found out who had the drone, and we got it landed. But the images from the drone was being placed on social media before we even identified who had died in the plane crash. And in the social media picture, they were able to capture, or in the drone, they were able to capture the tail numbers of the plane. Well, that's a problem.
Oh boy.
Because then they post that out there. Well, then that started a big deal about whose plane it was. It ain't hard to find out. You can search that and find out whose plane it is. It was terrible.
Right.
Terrible. And people do not think about the trauma that it can create when they do that. I've had not the plane crash even, but I've had family show up at death scenes because they've been notified on social media.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't had that problem yet, but I have had family that were notified before I could leave the scene, deal with the body, get back to the office to notify them, and then they're upset because I haven't already notified them.
Yes. Well, part
and,
of it
and I was like,
we have to have.
I can't.
Part of it is
I can't get there fast enough.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can't get there fast enough because social media is instant.
Right. Right. And going back to the drone thing, I've had the same thing happen here where we have fires and somebody will put a drone up over the area of the fire. And then that means all of our firefighters, if they have aircraft in the air to fight the fires, which we have to do that a lot up here, they have to ground those planes until the drone they know it's landed because it can interfere with that. But we have people that try to put drones up over the area of a fire, and then they're posting it all over social media. And then people are accusing the landowner of starting the fire, because then they'll go on to county clerk and recorder's website, find out who owns that piece of land, and then they blow it all up long before we've even had a chance to investigate. Accusations have already been made.
Yes, which can cause problems to the innocent person, but it also can cause problems to the investigation, because now, even though they're unfounded, those comments by those people put someone on notice that they're being looked at. And if they did do something wrong, then they're going to make an effort to hide what they did or change what they did. Well, if they think nobody knows, then they may not take those steps. But now they're being accused, and so they're gonna take those steps.
Right, and it's going to alter the outcome of the investigation.
Yes, exactly. Or delay it, make it longer.
Right.
We've had next of kin show up at scenes because they have been notified by social media. We've also had next of kin show up at scenes when it was not their family. Someone said it was.
Oh, man.
Right. Someone said it was, but it wasn't. So they show up all upset, and they want to see the body, and they want this, want that. Well, we're like, who are you? Well, who is this? Well, that's my son, Donnie, or whatever. And we're like, we don't think that's Donnie. The wall, whatever. We think it's Jim Bob. Well, now we're confused, right? Because now we have to go through extra steps to identify this person. Mm-hmm. Not that we just use driver's license, but that's our first assumption. And then we do other steps for positive ID. But now our first assumption's even wrong because these family members showed up. Well, it got worked out, but that's a problem because someone on social media named the person that died, and that was incorrect. And the trauma that it causes on families. First off, it's traumatic to be notified on Facebook of that. And then for it not to be true is great, but that trauma is still there. The initial impact of that trauma still exists.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But then again, it goes back to there's no repercussions for that. Somebody wants to be the first one to post something on social media and without thinking of the implications of what they're doing. And then it turns out to be misinformation, very wrong information, but then there's no repercussions for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because freedom of speech, even if you're an idiot and you're wrong.
Right.
So another good example of a positive thing in social media, we had an unidentified unknown that was found dead in a creek. And for some reason, the clothing that they had on had no identification or nothing. The clothing that they had on, I said, that looks like jail clothes. That looks like prison clothes. It was jeans and a shirt and shoes, but it just gave me the indication like prison attire. But we had no identification who he was. And so before we put it on social media, we contacted probation parole. We contacted all of our prisons. We contacted, in Missouri and around, do you have an escapee? Do you know this person? And no. And so finally, after 3 days, we had nothing. So we had taken some pictures. He had lots and lots of tattoos. And so we had taken some pictures, like 3 or 4 pictures of unique tattoos. And luckily, he had several. So some of the most unique ones we took pictures of, and the sheriff's department, the coroner's office, and a couple of acquainted, friends type with our agencies posted this on social media. If you recognize these tattoos, the coroner's office needs to make a notification of death or something. We put 3 hours. Within 3 hours, I had somebody contact our dispatch, and then I called them back, and that was this person's niece. And,
oh, wow.
And they said, that is my uncle, so-and-so. And I said, well, how do you know? And she told me how she knew. I said, there are other tattoos. Can you describe other tattoos that he may have? And she went down a list of where they were, what they were, and what they stood for. And I'm like, well, you must know. And,
yeah.
And so she told me that the person's brother. And so I contacted the brother, and I met the brother in town, and I showed him a couple pictures of tattoos. Yes, I finally then showed him the face, and he says, yes, that's my brother. It looks like my brother, but my brother had more hair, but he's been in prison for a few years, and he's in prison in Texas. And so he got on his phone app.
Oh, wow.
He got on his phone app to look at like he keeps updated of his brother's movements and stuff, because he was accused of some child pornography and some other stuff, and he wants him away from his children and things when he gets back. Well, anyway, the app showed status escapee. So he had escaped from Texas, had come all the way to Missouri, but had died like a mile short of where he was headed. He fell asleep in a creek, and he had some cardiac problems. A young man, but cardiac problems. Anyway, the short of that long story is, if it had not been for those tattoos, I don't know when or if we would have made identification. I'm sure maybe at some point U.S. Marshals would be looking maybe in Missouri for him, and there'd be some conversation, but it certainly helped. Using tattoos on social media helped a lot. So that's a one positive. Have you ever done something like that for identification?
Yeah, I have. I had a case, I think that was about 5 or 6 years ago. We had a young man who had gone missing a couple years before. He had been missing for 2 years and 2 months. And his family kept thinking that he had come to his demise through nefarious purposes. And it ended up, it was the person that shot and killed him, admitted to it finally, showed us approximately where the body was buried. He was buried 5.5 feet underground.
Oh, wow.
And once we got him excavated out and took him down for autopsy, I had been investigating his disappearance for a while. And that was when I worked for the district attorney's office and as an investigator. And I had combed through his social media, trying to look for him to see if he'd gone somewhere, if he had posted something. But there was one particular tattoo, and you can imagine being buried for 2 years and 2 months. He was pretty well decomposed and in various states of decomposition. And when we got him to the autopsy, the one arm that was pretty well preserved, there was a very distinct tattoo on the inside of his wrist. And I saw that tattoo and I was like, I know I've seen that tattoo. So I quickly got on my phone, scrolled through his Facebook photos and pulled it up. And I was like, there's the same tattoo right there. And so we were able to make a positive identification, among other things that we found on his body, to include his library card that was in his back pocket.
Nice. A well-read decedent.
Right.
So we use social media in similar way. We had a pedestrian killed in a car crash, and that we thought we knew who this person was. The problem is they had changed their appearance quite a bit, and those at the scene, again, they were walking their dog and they got struck by a vehicle on a very, very dark road, but there was no ID on this person. So one of the local police said, well, I think that's so-and-so. But it looks like him, but maybe not really. And so we got on social media, got on Facebook and found this person on Facebook, and there they were. And there was a little bit of an appearance change, which we couldn't really account for, age, or they were just trying to change their appearance in some way. But there was tattoos on this person that was very distinct on their lower leg, and then there was one on their upper arm, and in some pictures, as we scrolled through pictures, we could see those. Now, again, never, there's a caution, never take that as guaranteed ID. Even it's very unique, never take that as guaranteed ID. But it led us to think, okay, well, we think that's who it is. It kind of looks like who it is. We see some progression and change on Facebook, and we see these tattoos. So we're going to go under the presumption that that's who this is. Then we contacted family and said, we think this is your daughter. Understand there's been some appearance change, and we're not 100% sure, but I'd like to show you a photo, and you tell me if this is your daughter. And we had a facial photo. She was fine facially, and it was. And so, but that led us in the right direction, because there was such an appearance change with no ID that looking there, certainly does help. And it can also, and let's talk about more good, in a criminal setting. So in death investigation, you can help find next of kin, like you said. You can look at the person's profile. Right. You can find out who they're connected to. Some people are listed as mom, brother, whatever. But in a criminal investigation, it helps to tie people together. Like who knows who might be co-defendant,
right?
Who might they know that, hey, I've gotten information from Susie before. Jim Bob's our suspect. Hey, go pick Susie up and bring her in here, because I've worked with her before and I see that they're friends. Bring her in here. Now you might get some information from Susie because you didn't know they were connected until you seen it on social media.
Right. Yeah. And you look at their friends list, and then you kind of can spider web out from there. And then we can also, in the law enforcement realm, I don't know what you guys use there, but we use Clear here, and it has the web analytics, and then it also has all the associate analytics, and you can spider web it out from there. And then I can go on to social media, look at their friends list, see who they associate with, and compare it to that. And we start writing out our contact list of people we're going to talk to.
Right. And another thing social media is good for, Facebook is probably the best facial recognition software in the world. And I'm sure there's better, but I'm saying that anecdotally.
Yeah.
But you put a picture on Facebook of a crowd of people at a family reunion, and it's going to start trying to tag people.
Yep, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
I mean, it really starts knowing people. So that does help to be able to make make a nexus between people, because Facebook is really good at that. And so we've had some of those. We use Clear as well for agencies that don't know about Clear or use Clear. Clear is very good. Officers, can use that from their phone, from the laptop in their car, and you can find out more information than just running it through your local NCIC and things like that. Lots of information, phone numbers, vehicle information.
Yeah.
And
it's all open source information. Yes. It's not privileged information. This is all of that comes from open source information that anybody can access if they know how to get it.
Sure, but it combines it into a nice little gift pack for us.
Yes, it does.
Right,
it makes our life so much easier. Yeah.
Now, the one thing we don't have in ours, for instance, we could have the add-on, but the we could put a plate number in there, and it will give us every location that a plate reader has read that vehicle. So
right. And we do have that add-on. We got the license plate recognition, and now there's facial recognition on it.
Okay. So we can run the license plate, and it'll tell us who belongs to that car and all that information. But we did see a demo of the license plate reader, and we put in my license plate, for instance, off my personal truck, and it showed every place my truck had been scanned by a license plate reader. And license plate readers are everywhere. Sometimes there's tow trucks that run around parking lots looking. The license plate readers will read the tags to see if that vehicle is on a tow list. And so that gets uploaded. Or if police set in alongside the interstate doing drug interdiction, every car that goes by, they're reading tags. So all of a sudden, if you're somewhere. So again, you can know where a vehicle has been based upon that if they went through a tag reader. And there's a lot of license plate readers that you have no idea your plate's been read because you just drive past something. So so that's good. Now that's not social media. That's clear, but kind of a different thing. And I don't want to confuse people. You can't find that on social media. But by using something like Clear, getting the associates, then you take that to social media, and you can start learning a whole lot from making that nexus. So,
oh yeah, you can learn a lot about people, probably way more than they think that we know about them.
Yeah, because they like to put stuff in there. But
right.
So, what are some cautions? What would we want to tell our listeners are some cautions on using social media? I know one would be if you as a coroner or a police officer or something going to use it, of course, be careful not to use your personal identification if you're doing something covert. But then also, be careful what we post and how we post it, because there are several things I would like to comment on and tell them how wrong they are and tell them why.
Right.
Unfortunately, I can't do that.
We have to
be professional.
Yeah. Maintain that professionalism and not sink down into the argumentative, because like you said, you want to say something and say, no, you're wrong, but you can't. You just kind of step back and let them run with it. And pretty soon they're going to find out they are wrong.
Yeah. But nobody's going to care. Just like this, a case is active now is, again, someone, they're putting a bunch of bad stuff out about the suspect in this case. The suspect, there's no charges have been filed and probably won't be. But these people are putting all this bad stuff about the suspect in this case, and they're really making his life horrible. And like this guy was an innocent victim, and and I'm like, I want to put down all the past 6 months of assaults. I want to show all the gun violence, the arrests, the domestic violence. I want to say how bad of a guy this victim was. So don't be just mouthing off about the quote suspect. The victim was a horrible, horrible human being, and you're all making him out to be like a saint. And I can't do that.
Right. It's really frustrating. Yeah. But we have to rise above and take that high road.
And we just have to accept it. Another caution is to be sure what we put on social media is accurate and without bias.
Right. And everything is legal as far as identification and what we've said isn't going to bring harm to somebody.
Right. And for the most part, I think that's common sense, but we've got to be careful if we post pictures of a decedent. To me, the caution would be until you've exhausted all other possibilities, don't post their face. Although, if tattoos don't work, or if there are no tattoos, or if there's just no way possible to identify this decedent by any means that you have, then maybe you could, if you got a good facial shot that isn't traumatizing, you could maybe post a facial shot and ask for it to be shared and try to find it, which in those cases, that's still legal to do, but I would justify it by saying you've you've worked out all other means, and certainly never post anything traumatic or injury related.
No.
Number one is it's not good for anybody to see that. Number two, you certainly don't want a family to bump into that and see their son in that condition.
Yeah, and be traumatized for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And something else that might be a good idea too is have a sketch done.
Yes.
Of the decedent. If you can find a sketch artist that can come in and maybe do a sketch of what they would look like alive, it might not be as traumatizing.
Yeah.
Or we've also had skull reconstructions done, the clay skull reconstruction done, and put that out to try to identify an unidentified decedent that we've had.
Right. And it's amazing how accurate those things really are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, so social media obviously can be good for us. It can be bad for us, and vice versa on the other side for the people using it. I think the biggest takeaway that listeners ought to think about when it comes to social media is social media. I don't want to say it can be your best friend and your worst enemy, but really that's what it is. Social media can be your best friend when it comes to making nexus between people, finding next of kin, or somebody to contact on a decedent, or using it to identify an unknown. Those three things are very, very good when it comes to social media. The bad part is lies, disinformation, and maybe even almost as bad as that is next of kin getting notified of a death or showing up at a scene. I think those are the top three of each that we need to really be cautious of. And social media is here to stay. I think it's great, but it seemed like life was a lot easier, before Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it was. But like you said, it's here to stay, and it's kind of like a rose with its thorns.
Yeah.
That has to be handled with care.
I seen somebody on TikTok the other day. Yes, I'm on TikTok. I seen somebody on TikTok the other day say, the difference between Facebook and TikTok. TikTok will make you love people you've never will meet. And Facebook makes you hate people you've known for years.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that's pretty accurate.
That is very accurate. I would have to agree with that.
Yeah. So anyway, and let me tell you, Twitter, we talked about Facebook a lot. Twitter is no better.
No,
none of them. They're all full of disinformation, and you've got to wade everything through. So it's not just Facebook. Facebook is popular, but Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, which I know nothing about, and there's many, many other social medias. All those social medias can be good and bad. It seems like Twitter and Facebook are the ones that we bump up against the most in our industry.
Right.
As far
and
as
another one is Tumblr. That one I've seen quite a bit in my law enforcement investigations. That's one that I've seen the younger people use quite a bit is Tumblr.
I guess I've heard of it, yes, but I've never really been on it or whatever. There's too many.
I hadn't heard of it until I had a murder investigation, and that's how the victim and the suspect were communicating with each other. And it was through Tumblr. So I had to have a crash course on how to use Tumblr.
I bet. One that we don't have a lot of problems with, and certainly has a capability of being just as bad, but it doesn't seem to be, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is very much more of a professional site.
It is, but that's also where I know a lot of identification theft, identity theft is stemming from, and I have since deleted my LinkedIn account.
Yeah. And again, everything, there's going to be someone bad on every platform doing something bad, right? But it's less likely for somebody to post on LinkedIn, "Hey, Billy Bob just got over here to Stop and Rob." That's going to be on Facebook.
Right.
That's not going to be on LinkedIn.
Right.
I mean, not that there isn't misinformation on LinkedIn, but it's just a different atmosphere of people, So, but again, it has its good and its bad. So, hey, been a great conversation. I know we only hit the surface. There's a lot of things that we could talk about when it comes to, social media and investigations, but I think we've hit the most important. And then now it's just a matter of just dwelling down and seeing how it actually works for you, the listener, when it comes to death investigation stuff. So, Wendy, any last thoughts on cautionary tales or anything about social media you want to leave our listeners with?
Just proceed with caution. Use it as a good tool and resource, but just be very careful and cautious when using it.
Absolutely. That is a great thought. All right. So listen, as we end this episode, I just want to thank you again for sticking around and listening here to the end. Remember, if you need any training, if there's anything you need out of our academy, we'll be willing to help in every way that we can. And we want to, not only online, but also in person. So again, you can find us on ditacademy.org. You can go to coronertalk.com, click on the academy link. We are everywhere as we can be. So you can Google us, Death Investigation Academy, and we pop up at the top. So just let us know anything we can do for you. We certainly want to. Remember, find a way to be a blessing to someone. I've said that every show since 2014, to find a way to be a blessing to someone. That can be paying off their mortgage or opening the door and smiling and saying hi at the grocery store. Somehow or another, find a way to be a blessing in someone's life, because there's enough negative out there that sometimes somebody just needs a smile. And above all, remember, be safe.
Thanks for listening to Coroner Talk, a DSPN media production.
Visit our website at coronertalk.com.
And be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/coroner training.
3617 1024 scene en route to morgue.